To our amazing viewers at Cheating Tales Lab, welcome and thank you. Your presence makes these stories worth sharing. We'd love to hear, which part of the world are you joining us from? Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Foundations of Sand. Max Blackburn wiped sweat from his brow as he loaded the last of the equipment into his truck. 20 years of hard work had transformed Blackburn Construction from a one-man operation into one of the most respected building firms in Albany. The calluses on his hands were badges of honor, earned through determination rather than privilege. His phone buzzed. The name, Lori, flashed on the screen. Max sighed and let it go to voicemail, his fourth missed call from his wife today. Their marriage had been deteriorating for months, arguments erupting over everything from finances to parenting their 17-year-old son, Caleb. "Hey, Mr. B," called Felipe, his foreman of 15 years. "You heading home?" "Eventually," Max replied, closing the tailgate. "Need to stop by the Sheffield site first." Felipe's expression darkened. Mrs. Blackburn called the office again. Sounded upset. Max nodded, unsurprised. Lori had been increasingly erratic, complaining about their inadequate lifestyle despite their comfortable upper-middle-class existence. The three-bedroom home Max had built with his own hands was suddenly too small. The Caribbean vacation last year was not luxurious enough. Their son's reliable sedan was embarrassing compared to his private school classmates' sports cars. "I'll deal with it," Max said, climbing into his truck. The drive to the Sheffield mansion renovation gave Max time to reflect. He'd met Lori waiting tables during his apprenticeship days. They'd fallen hard for each other, the ambitious construction worker and the artistic waitress with dreams of opening her own gallery. They'd supported each other through lean years, celebrated Max's first major contract, welcomed Caleb into the world, and built what Max believed was a solid life. But something had changed. The warmth in Lori's eyes had cooled. She'd begun attending art functions without him, coming home at odd hours. Their conversations had become transactional rather than intimate. At the Sheffield estate, Max found Byron Sheffield waiting, his tailored suit a stark contrast to Max's work clothes. "Max, just the man I wanted to see," Sheffield boomed, clapping him on the shoulder. "The renovations are magnificent." "Talia is thrilled." Max nodded professionally. "Glad to hear it. We're on schedule to finish next week." "Actually, that's what I wanted to discuss. We're hosting a gala next month. Thought you might want to come. Bring your lovely wife." "Appreciate the invite, but—" "Nonsense. You must attend. Your wife, Lori, isn't it?" seemed quite interested when Talia mentioned it at her gallery showing last month. Max froze. "My wife was at your gallery showing?" Sheffield's smile faltered slightly. "Yes, with that art dealer fellow. Assumed you knew. Quite knowledgeable about modern art, your wife." Max maintained his composure through the rest of the conversation, but his mind raced. Lori hadn't mentioned attending any showing with an art dealer fellow. Driving home, Max called Lori's gallery. Her assistant, Monica, answered. "Hey Monica, it's Max. Is Lori still there?" "Oh, no, Mr. Blackburn. She left early. Said she had a meeting with a potential investor." The hesitation in Monica's voice triggered Max's suspicions further. At home, Max found the house empty except for Caleb, who sat hunched over his laptop at the kitchen counter, wireless earbuds blocking out the world. "Hey," Max said, tapping Caleb's shoulder. Caleb startled, pulling out an earbud. "What? Where's your mom?" Caleb shrugged. "Some meeting. There's leftover pizza." Max grabbed a beer from the refrigerator and leaned against the counter. "How's school?" "Fine. Baseball season starting soon, right? First game next week." Caleb closed his laptop. "I quit the team." "You what? Why would you?" "It's a waste of time. Coach is an idiot, and I need to focus on college applications." Max bit back his frustration. Baseball had been their thing since Caleb was 5. "You didn't think to discuss this with me first?" "Mom said it was my decision." "Of course she did," Max muttered. "What's that supposed to mean?" Caleb challenged. "Nothing. Just would have appreciated being part of the conversation." Caleb rolled his eyes. "Like you're ever around to have conversations." "I'm working, Caleb. Building something for this family." "Whatever. Mom says we could have had more if you weren't so stubborn about taking on bigger projects." The comment stung. Max had deliberately kept his business manageable, valuing quality over quantity and maintaining work-life balance. "There's more to life than money," Max said. "Tell that to Brad's dad." He just bought him a Mustang for his birthday. Max clenched his jaw. Brad's dad also works 80 hours a week and is on his third marriage. At least they live in Wellington Heights instead of this dump. This dump is a home I built with my own hands, Max said quietly. Caleb grabbed his laptop. Maybe that's the problem. You're too busy being proud of mediocrity. Before Max could respond, Caleb stormed upstairs, leaving Max alone with his cooling pizza and darkening thoughts. At midnight, Max heard Lori's key in the door. From his workshop in the garage, he watched through the window as she slipped off expensive-looking heels he'd never seen before. When she entered the garage, she startled. Jesus, Max. Why are you sitting in the dark? Max turned on the lamp beside his workbench. Had some thinking to do. Lori set down her purse. If this is about me missing dinner, I told you I had a meeting. With a potential investor? That's what Monica said. Yes. Funny. Byron Sheffield seems to think you were at his wife's gallery showing last month with an art dealer fellow. Never mentioned that to me. Lori's expression tightened. I meet lots of people for the gallery. I can't report every interaction. Used to be you'd want to tell me about your day. Max stood, approaching her. Used to be we shared things. Don't start, Max. I'm tired. Is there someone else, Lori? Her eyes flashed defensively. What are you talking about? Simple question. This is ridiculous. I'm going to bed. As she turned to leave, Max noticed the faint hickey partially concealed by her collar, a mark he definitely hadn't left. In that moment, the foundations of his world began to crumble beneath his feet. Chapter 2. House of Cards. Max spent the next week watching and waiting. He didn't confront Lori again, but started paying closer attention to patterns he'd previously ignored. The late meetings, the new clothes, the constant texting and sudden guarding of her phone, the unexplained weekend art retreats. Rather than explode with accusations, Max methodically gathered information. He hired Ryder Sullivan, a former military policeman who now ran a private investigation firm. I need certainty, Max told Ryder during their discreet meeting at a diner 20 miles from Albany. Not suspicions. Ryder nodded, his weathered face somber. Most clients who come to me already know the truth, deep down. They just need confirmation. I've built my life on facts and precision, Max replied. I measure twice, cut once. Always have. 3 days later, Max's phone buzzed with a text from Ryder. Check your email. Sorry, man. The attached photos showed Lori entering an upscale apartment building on Riverside Drive, being greeted at the door by a tall, slender man with carefully styled silver hair. Additional photos showed them embracing in the lobby, his hand possessively on the small of her back. The final images, taken through a high-rise window with a telephoto lens, left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. The man was identified as Broderick Brody Harrington, 52, recently relocated from Los Angeles. Owner of several high-end galleries across the country. Recently divorced. Net worth estimated at 8 figures. Max saved the information, then destroyed the paper copies in his workshop shredder. That night at dinner, he watched Lori push food around her plate, while Caleb complained about his economics teacher. Mr. Rivera is such a loser, Caleb said. He drives a Honda Civic, but tries to lecture us about financial success. Maybe he has different priorities, Max suggested. Lori set down her fork. Or maybe he should practice what he preaches if he wants respect. The subtle dig wasn't lost on Max. He met Lori's gaze. Speaking of practicing what you preach, how's the new investor working out? The one from your late meeting last week. Lori's eyes narrowed slightly. Still in discussions. Interesting. What's his name again? A nearly imperceptible pause. It's a consortium, not an individual. Max nodded, taking a slow sip of water. Must be exciting, all these new opportunities. Later that night, Max accessed Lori's laptop while she showered. Her password, Caleb's birthday, hadn't changed in years. What he found confirmed his worst fears. Emails to Brody discussing their future together, complaints about Max being stuck in his ways, plans for a gallery opening where Brody would officially name Lori as managing director of his new East Coast acquisition. One particular email chain made Max's blood run cold. Lori had forwarded personal financial information to Brody. Information about Max's business, their mortgage, Caleb's college fund. He's still resistant to selling the business, even though the Westfield Group's offer was generous. So stubborn about his legacy. Once I have a clearer picture of our options, I'll approach him about divorce settlement expectations. L. Max carefully closed the laptop, replacing it exactly where he'd found it. Then he went to his workshop and methodically crushed an oak board with his bare hands, splinters embedding in his palms as he silently unleashed his rage. The next morning, Max called his oldest friend, Bennett Walsh, who had been his attorney since Max formed his LLC 15 years ago. I need to protect myself, Max explained after outlining what he'd discovered. Without tipping my hand, Bennett whistled softly. Jesus, Max. I'm sorry, but you're smart to call. People do crazy things during divorces, especially when there's significant assets involved. Over the next 2 weeks, Max quietly began disentangling his finances, moving funds to secure accounts, documenting business assets, and gathering evidence of Lori's infidelity. He maintained his routine, giving no indication that he knew the truth. He watched as Lori's deceptions multiplied. The fake art conference, actually a weekend at Brody's Hamptons house, the sudden interest in refinancing their home, the not-so-subtle suggestions that Max should sell his business to reduce stress. Throughout it all, Caleb grew increasingly distant from Max while developing an obvious admiration for Brody, whom Lori had strategically introduced as a gallery investor and mentor. The breaking point came when Max overheard Caleb on the phone, laughing about something Brody had said about construction workers being modern-day peasants. The casual disdain in his son's voice for everything Max had built shattered something fundamental inside him. That night, Max accessed Lori's email one final time and found a draft divorce filing she'd been preparing with a lawyer Max didn't recognize. The document outlined demands for their home, half of Max's business assets, full custody of Caleb, and exorbitant alimony based on future earnings potential. Max printed the document, then carefully set about making his counter-moves. Chapter 3. The Collapse. On a Tuesday evening in October, Max returned home to find Lori and Caleb sitting at the kitchen island, their expressions suggesting a prepared ambush. "We need to talk," Lori said, her tone rehearsed. Max set down his keys. About the future. About what's best for this family." Max poured himself a whiskey from the cabinet, taking his time. "I'm listening. I'm unhappy, Max. Have been for a long time." "That's not exactly breaking news, Lori." She frowned at his calm demeanor. "I've met someone. Someone who appreciates my vision, who understands the art world." "Brody Harrington," Max said flatly. Lori's eyes widened. "How did you? You're not as discreet as you think." Max leaned against the counter. "So what's the plan? You leave me for your rich boyfriend, take half my business that I've built from nothing over 20 years, and you both ride off into the sunset." Caleb stood, his face flushing. "Don't talk to her like that. She deserves better than being stuck in this ordinary life." "And you think Brody Harrington is her ticket to extraordinary?" Max asked his son. "The man who's on his 4th marriage? Who calls people like me modern-day peasants?" Caleb paled slightly. "How did you? I hear things. See things. More than either of you give me credit for." Max turned back to Lori. "How long?" Lori lifted her chin defiantly. 8 months. And I've never been happier." 8 months, Max repeated. "Around the time you started pushing me to take the Westfield contract, to expand the business, to take on more debt. It was an opportunity. It was setting me up," Max cut in. "Get me leverage to the hilt so you could take half in the divorce." "Did Brody suggest that strategy, or was that your own brilliant idea?" Lori's silence was confirmation enough. "Dad, you don't understand," Caleb interjected. "Mom's gallery could be huge with Brody's connections. We could have a better life. A house in Wellington Heights. Summer in the Hamptons." "And what does Brody get in return?" Max asked. "Besides your mother, he gets a talented partner," Caleb shouted. "Someone he respects, unlike you." Max set down his glass carefully. "You don't know what you're talking about, son. I'm not your son. Not really. You're never here. Always at some job site. Always covered in dirt. Always embarrassing me in front of my friends with your work truck and calloused hands." The words hit harder than any physical blow. Max looked at his son, this stranger wearing Caleb's face, parroting Brody's elitist worldview. "I built that truck," Max said quietly. "And these calluses paid for your private school, your baseball equipment, your college fund." "A college fund that wouldn't even cover 2 years at Princeton," Caleb scoffed. "Brody's already talking to the admissions director there. He has connections." Lori placed a hand on Caleb's arm. We weren't going to discuss that yet. A cold realization washed over Max. You've already decided. Both of you. This isn't a discussion, it's a notification. Lori had the decency to look momentarily ashamed. I filed the divorce papers yesterday. My lawyer advised me to move out immediately with Caleb. She pushed an envelope across the counter. Full custody is best for everyone. You work such long hours, and with the business. Stop. Max didn't touch the envelope. When? Tonight. We've packed what we need. Brody has plenty of room at his place until we find something suitable. Max looked at his son. And you're on board with this? Moving in with a man you barely know? I know enough, Caleb retorted. He cares about my future. About what I want. And what do you want, Caleb? I want what Mom wants. A better life. Opportunities. Not to end up. He gestured vaguely at Max's work clothes. Not to end up like me. Max finished. A man who builds things with his hands. Who keeps his promises. You promised Mom success. Caleb exploded. A good life. But you held us back with your middle-class contentment. You're a terrible father. Caleb continued, his voice rising to a shout. Mom's right. You held us back. He threw his car keys at Max. I'm moving in with her new boyfriend. He's rich. The keys clattered on the counter between them. Max looked down at them. Keys to the car he'd bought Caleb for his 16th birthday. The car Caleb had suddenly deemed embarrassing compared to the luxury vehicles driven by Brody and his social circle. Something hardened in Max's expression as he picked up the keys. I see. We'll send for the rest of our things, Lori said, retrieving her purse. My lawyer will be in touch about the house. I'm assuming you'll want to keep it, given your attachment to it. Max watched silently as Lori and Caleb gathered their pre-packed suitcases from the hallway. Neither looked back as they walked out the front door to where a sleek black Range Rover idled at the curb, Brody Harrington at the wheel. As the vehicle pulled away, Max made one call while holding Caleb's discarded keys. Bennett, he said when his lawyer answered. It's time. Execute everything we discussed. Every single step. He paused, watching the taillights disappear down the street. And contact Ryder. Tell him to activate Phase 2. Are you sure, Max? Bennett asked. Once we start. They've made their choice, Max said coldly. Now they can live with the consequences. He hung up and walked to his workshop, where he methodically began laying out the tools he would need, not for building, but for dismantling the lives of those who had betrayed him. Chapter 4. Blueprint for Retribution. 3 days after Lori and Caleb left, Max sat across from Bennett Walsh in the attorney's wood-paneled office. Spread between them were financial statements, property records, and business documents. You were smart to move quickly, Bennett said, tapping a folder. The separate accounts you established can't be touched in the divorce proceedings. And transferring 40% of Blackburn Construction to your foreman Felipe's ownership last year as part of his long-term compensation package was perfectly legal. Lori thought I was being too generous, Max said with a humorless smile. Now she knows why. Bennett nodded. The trust for Caleb is ironclad too. He can't access it until he's 25, and only for education or starting a legitimate business. No fancy cars, no partying through Europe. And the house. Purchased before the marriage, extensively renovated with your labor, maintained with your separate funds. We have a strong case that it's not marital property. Bennett leaned back. But Max, these are just defensive measures. You mentioned something about Phase 2 with Ryder. Max's eyes hardened. That's something different. A response, not just protection. Max, Bennett began cautiously. I've known you 20 years. You're not the vindictive type. Maybe I should have been, Max replied. Maybe if I'd been less trusting, less focused on building something worthwhile, I wouldn't be sitting here watching my wife try to destroy me while my son calls me a failure. Bennett sighed. Just don't do anything illegal. Please. For your own sake. Max stood. I appreciate your concern, old friend. But some debts can't be settled in court. From Bennett's office, Max drove to an industrial area near the old rail yards. In a nondescript brick building with blacked-out windows, he found Ryder Sullivan waiting in a room filled with surveillance equipment. Got what you asked for, Ryder said, sliding a thumb drive across the table. Wasn't easy. Harrington's security is tight, but not impenetrable. No security ever is, if you know where to look. Ryder tapped the drive. His business dealings are interesting. Not exactly illegal, but definitely in the gray area. Art worlds full of manipulation and inflation. Any leverage points? Ryder smiled thinly. Several. His last divorce got messy because his wife discovered he'd been selling forgeries to certain clients. Nothing was proven in court. He settled quickly, but the rumors persist. And his current galleries? Clean on paper. But his primary investor is a holding company registered in the Caymans. Ownership is murky. Max nodded, absorbing the information. What about his personal life? That's where it gets juicy. Ryder pulled out a tablet, swiping through photos. Harrington has a type. Artistic women in vulnerable positions. Usually married. He romances them, promises them careers, uses them to make connections, then discards them when something better comes along. The images showed Brody with different women over the years, all bearing a striking resemblance to Lori. Same build, similar artistic style, same hopeful expression. How many? I found 5 over the last decade. All followed the same pattern. The last one had a nervous breakdown after he dumped her for a museum curator's daughter. Max's jaw tightened. And my wife thinks she's special. They all did, Ryder said. His current interest in Albany is suspicious too. The market here isn't exactly Los Angeles or New York. What's his angle? Still piecing that together, but it involves the Wellington Heights development. The new cultural center they're planning? Harrington's been meeting with city officials, pushing for his gallery to be the centerpiece. Any connection to Westfield Group? Max asked. Ryder looked surprised. How'd you know? They've been aggressively trying to buy my business for the past year. Lori was pushing hard for me to sell. Westfield is handling the construction contract for the cultural center, Ryder confirmed. If Harrington gets the gallery space, it's worth millions in prestige and tax benefits. Max drummed his fingers on the table, pieces falling into place. So Harrington needs the cultural center contract. Westfield needs my construction business to complete their portfolio of local builders for the development. And my wife is the perfect pawn, Ryder finished. She gives Harrington social connections to local arts patrons while providing leverage over you. A 3-way manipulation, Max said softly, with my family as collateral damage. For the next week, Max lived like a ghost in his own home, sleeping little, planning much. He converted his workshop into a command center, mapping relationships between Harrington, Westfield Group, city officials, and the Wellington Heights development. He contacted former clients, suppliers, and industry connections, carefully rebuilding his network with strategic purpose. He called in favors, promised future considerations, and positioned his allies without revealing his ultimate objective. During this time, Lori's lawyer, an aggressive divorce attorney named Pamela Reeves, sent increasingly threatening letters demanding emergency financial support and accusing Max of economic abuse for refusing to provide funds beyond Caleb's basic necessities. Max responded through Bennett with minimal legally required support and cold documentation of Lori's adultery. When Pamela threatened to go public with accusations about Max's controlling behavior, Bennett countered with evidence of Lori's extramarital activities that would humiliate her in the conservative arts community she was trying to impress. The stalemate held, but Max knew it was temporary. Harrington's influence was growing. The local arts journal featured a glowing profile of him and his vision for revitalizing Albany's cultural landscape, with Lori prominently mentioned as his gallery director and partner in both business and life. The article included a quote from Caleb praising his mother's courage in pursuing her dreams and expressing gratitude for Harrington's mentorship. The photo showed them posed before a modernist painting, Harrington's arm possessively around Lori's waist, Caleb beaming beside them like the son Harrington never had. Max tore the magazine to shreds, then called Ryder. I need more, he said without preamble. Everything you can get on the Wellington Heights deal. Every player, every penny, every permit. That's swimming in dangerous waters, Ryder warned. Big money, big politics. I'm already drowning, Max replied. Might as well start splashing. By month's end, Max had assembled a comprehensive understanding of the Wellington Heights project and Harrington's role in it. The cultural center was the jewel in the development's crown, designed to transform a former industrial area into an upscale district of luxury condominiums, boutique shops, and arts venues. The project's success hinged on securing certain zoning exemptions, historical preservation funds, and tax incentives, all requiring approval from city officials and community boards. Harrington had been systematically courting these decision-makers, hosting private showings and exclusive dinners where Lori played the charming hostess. What they didn't know was that Max had deeper roots in Albany than anyone suspected. His decades of honest work had earned him friendships with people at every level of the community, from the building inspectors who respected his meticulous craftsmanship to the planning department staff who appreciated his straightforward permit applications. One evening, Max met with Councilman Ernest Diaz, whose family home Max had rebuilt after a fire 10 years earlier, at a quiet bar on the edge of town. "This cultural center," Max said after they'd exchanged pleasantries. "What's your take?" Ernest sighed, swirling his whiskey. "On paper, it's perfect. Jobs, prestige, tax revenue. But something feels off. The way it's being pushed through, the players involved." "Harrington." Ernest nodded. "Smooth talker. Big promises. Donations to all the right campaigns. Legitimate. Legal, yes. Ethical." Ernest shrugged. "The Arts Committee is dazzled by his Hollywood connections. The mayor sees photo ops with celebrities. Nobody's asking hard questions." Max leaned forward. "What if someone did?" Ernest studied him carefully. "This personal for you, Max? He's sleeping with my wife and turning my son against me. So yes, it's personal." Ernest whistled softly. "Damn. Didn't know. Few do. They're keeping it quiet until the divorce is final." "What are you looking for?" Max slid a folder across the table. "Just information. Public records. Meeting minutes. Who's pushing what agenda?" Ernest hesitated. "This could get complicated, Max." "Life already is, Ernest. I'm not asking you to do anything improper. Just help me understand what I'm up against." After a long moment, Ernest picked up the folder. "For what it's worth, I never liked the way this deal smelled. Too many handshakes behind closed doors." "That's all I need to know," Max said. As October turned to November, Max's plan took clearer shape. Through Ernest and other contacts, he learned that the zoning board would be voting on crucial variances for the Wellington Heights project in early December. Without these approvals, the Cultural Center and Harrington's Gallery would be significantly delayed or possibly canceled. Meanwhile, Westfield Group had increased pressure on local officials to expedite permits, citing concerns about rising costs. Their public statements emphasized community benefits while glossing over the considerable tax abatements they were seeking. Max began attending community meetings, not speaking, just observing. He noted which neighborhood representatives seemed skeptical of the development and which had suddenly become enthusiastic supporters. He tracked campaign contributions, consultancy fees, and the subtle ways influence flowed between money and power. One name kept appearing in his research: Councilwoman Vivian Torres, head of the zoning committee and a noted arts patron. Torres had recently become one of Harrington's most vocal supporters after attending several private events at his temporary gallery, events where Lori had served as hostess. Through Ryder's surveillance, Max obtained photos of Torres accepting a small package from Harrington during one such event. The exchange appeared casual but deliberate, conducted in a corner away from other guests. "Could be anything," Ryder cautioned when showing Max the images. "A personal gift, an invitation. Or something more valuable," Max mused. "Find out." 2 days later, Ryder called with an answer. Torres has a daughter at Juilliard. Aspiring painter. Struggling financially despite the prestigious program. "Let me guess," Max said. Harrington offered to feature her work. Better. He purchased 3 of her pieces for his Los Angeles gallery. Paid $20,000 each. And what's her work actually worth? According to my Art World contact, maybe $2,000. Tops. She's talented but unknown. Max smiled grimly. So not illegal, just grossly inflated. A creative form of influence. Exactly. Technically, Torres disclosed the sale on her ethics forms. But not the inflated valuation. Is that enough to force her recusal from the zoning vote? If it came to light in the right way? Absolutely. Max nodded slowly. Good. Very good. He paused. Any contact from Caleb? Ryder's expression softened slightly. Nothing direct. But according to our surveillance, he's been arguing with Lori. Overheard him saying he misses his friends, his school. The honeymoon phase is ending, Max observed. Reality setting in. Want me to approach him? Max shook his head. Not yet. Let him stew a bit longer. That night, Max received a text from an unknown number. Dad, can we talk? Things are complicated. See. Max stared at the message for a long time before replying. When you're ready to actually listen, not just talk, let me know. No response came, and Max returned to refining his plans for dismantling Brody Harrington's carefully constructed world, and by extension, the fantasy life Lori had chosen over their marriage. Chapter 5. Foundation Work. December arrived with unseasonable warmth and mounting tension. Max's divorce proceedings had stalled in legal maneuvering, with Lori's attorney demanding financial disclosures that Bennett strategically delayed through procedural tactics. Meanwhile, the Wellington Heights development had become front-page news. Environmental concerns had emerged about potential contamination from the site's industrial past. Community activists questioned the tax incentives. Historical preservationists objected to modifications of certain buildings. None of these obstacles was insurmountable, but collectively they created delays and public relations challenges that frustrated Westfield Group's executives and, by extension, Brody Harrington. Max observed these developments with quiet satisfaction. Many of the concerns had legitimate merit, and several had been strategically amplified through carefully placed information shared with journalists and community groups by Max's growing network of allies. The turning point came during a contentious public hearing where Councilwoman Torres attempted to fast-track approval for the cultural center portion of the project while deferring other considerations. The cultural benefits to our community cannot be overstated, Torres argued, gesturing toward architectural renderings displayed on easels. Mr. Harrington's commitment to bringing world-class art to Albany represents a once-in-a-generation opportunity. From his seat in the back row, Max watched as Ernest Diaz cleared his throat and addressed the committee. Before we proceed with segmenting this project, I'd like to submit documents for the record regarding potential conflicts of interest. He passed folders to each committee member. These materials raise questions about certain financial relationships between developers and officials that should be properly disclosed and evaluated. The room erupted in murmurs as committee members flipped through the contents. Documents showing the art purchases from Torres's daughter, carefully annotated with market valuations from independent appraisers demonstrating the inflated prices. Torres's face flushed with anger. This is an ambush, Ernest. My daughter's art career has nothing to do with this project. Then you should have no objection to recusing yourself from votes involving Mr. Harrington's interests, Ernest replied calmly. Transparency is essential for public trust. The meeting devolved into procedural arguments, ultimately resulting in postponement of the vote and referral of the conflict of interest allegations to the Ethics Committee. Outside the municipal building, Max nodded briefly to Ernest before slipping away. The first domino had fallen. That evening, local news led with the controversy. The cameras caught Brody Harrington leaving the meeting, his usual smooth composure replaced by barely contained fury as reporters shouted questions about his art purchases and connections to city officials. Mr. Harrington, did you intentionally overpay for Councilwoman Torres's daughter's artwork to influence her vote? Is it true you've hosted private events for zoning officials at your gallery? How will this ethics investigation affect the cultural center timeline? Harrington pushed through the media scrum without comment, but his thunderous expression said everything. Max watched the coverage from his workshop, a glass of bourbon in hand. His phone buzzed with a text from Ryder, subject extremely agitated. Returned to residence and engaged in heated argument with L. Surveillance audio suggests project delays threatening gallery financing. Max smiled. Financial pressure was the first step. Harrington operated on leverage and appearance, both now compromised. The next morning, Max's doorbell rang unexpectedly. He opened it to find Caleb standing awkwardly on the porch, hands jammed in his jacket pockets. Hey, Caleb said, not meeting Max's eyes. Max leaned against the doorframe. This is a surprise. Can I come in? After a moment's hesitation, Max stepped aside. Caleb entered, glancing around as if seeing the house for the first time. Nothing's changed, he observed. Why would it? Max closed the door. Coffee. Caleb nodded, following Max to the kitchen. They moved in uncomfortable silence as Max prepared 2 mugs. How's school? Max finally asked. Fine. Different. Caleb accepted the coffee. Not better or worse, just different. And life with Brody and your mom. Caleb flinched slightly at the directness. It's okay. His place is nice. But nothing. It's fine. Max sat across from his son. You didn't come here to tell me everything's fine, Caleb. Caleb stared into his coffee. There's been some tension since the council meeting. Brody's stressed about his gallery plans hitting a snag. How did you know about that? Max shrugged. I read the news. Caleb shifted uncomfortably. He thinks someone's deliberately interfering. Says he has enemies in the art world trying to sabotage him. Successful men often make enemies. Mom thinks it might be you, Caleb blurted, then immediately looked like he regretted the words. Max's expression remained neutral. Interesting theory. Is it true? Caleb pressed. Are you trying to mess up Brody's project? Why would I do that? Because you're angry. About Mom. About me leaving. Max studied his son. If I were trying to mess up Harrington's project, it would be because he's using corrupt methods to get what he wants. The ethics investigation isn't about me. It's about his actions. He says it's just how business gets done. Is that what you believe? That success requires corruption. Caleb's gaze dropped again. I don't know what to believe anymore. Why are you really here, Caleb? A long pause. I need money, Caleb finally admitted. For school stuff. Does your mother know you're asking me? No. She and Brody are fighting about finances. The gallery renovation is over budget, and with the delays. He trailed off. I see. Max's voice cooled. So when things get difficult with your chosen family, you come back to the safety net. Caleb flushed. Forget it. This was a mistake. He stood abruptly. Sit down, Max ordered, his tone leaving no room for argument. Surprisingly, Caleb complied. I've continued paying your tuition and expenses directly to the school, Max said. If you need additional funds for legitimate educational purposes, have the school contact me with the request. I need it now. Today. For what exactly? Caleb's eyes darted away. A class trip. Deposits due. Which class? Economics. To the stock exchange. Max recognized the lie immediately. He'd signed the permission slip for that trip months ago and paid the fee in full. Try again, he said quietly. Caleb's facade cracked. Fine. Princeton interview. Brody arranged it, but I need to get there, stay overnight. He promised to cover it, but now he's saying he can't, and Mom's freaking out because it's my big chance, and if I miss it. When is this interview? Tomorrow. Max nodded slowly. I'll handle the arrangements. Give me the details. Relief washed over Caleb's face. Really? You'll help. You're still my son, Max said simply. Whatever else has happened. After Caleb left, Max made several calls. The Princeton interview was legitimate. Harrington had indeed arranged it through alumni connections. Max booked transportation and accommodation for Caleb, then contacted his own alma mater's admissions office about Caleb's application status there. That evening, Max met with Ryder to review the latest surveillance. Harrington's business was showing signs of strain. The cultural center delays had spooked investors. 2 prominent artists had pulled out of commitments to his Albany gallery opening. His cash flows tightening, Ryder reported. He's leveraged across several properties. The Albany gallery renovation is essentially halted until the zoning issues resolve. And Lori, increasingly anxious. Their arguments are escalating. She expected to be gallery director by now, earning her own income. Instead, she's completely dependent on him financially. Max nodded thoughtfully. What about the Torres investigation? Ethics committee is digging deeper. Found more questionable art purchases from relatives of planning board members. Ryder slid across photos of Harrington at various social functions, working the room, always the center of attention. He's scrambling to contain the damage, calling in favors. Time to apply more pressure, Max decided. The next phase of Max's plan targeted Westfield Group directly. Through construction industry connections, he arranged for enhanced scrutiny of their ongoing projects throughout the Northeast. Building inspectors suddenly found code violations requiring expensive corrections. Supply deliveries mysteriously encountered delays. Key subcontractors became unavailable for Wellington Heights work, citing prior commitments. None of these actions was illegal or even explicitly connected to Max. They were simply the result of whispered conversations, old favors called in, and the invisible network of relationships that governed the construction world, a network Max had cultivated for decades while Harrington collected art and charmed socialites. By mid-December, Westfield Group was publicly expressing concerns about the regulatory environment in Albany and hinting they might scale back the Wellington Heights development if approvals continued to stall. The cultural center, Harrington's crown jewel, was specifically mentioned as a project that might be reconsidered. The pressure created exactly the reaction Max anticipated. Harrington began making increasingly desperate moves to salvage the project, overextending his financial commitments and making promises he couldn't keep. From the shadows, Max watched and waited, setting the stage for the final act of his retribution. Chapter 6. Pressure Points. As Christmas approached, Albany's social scene buzzed with speculation about Brody Harrington's planned gallery opening. Originally scheduled for early December, it had been postponed twice due to renovation complications. Whispered rumors suggested financial troubles, permit issues, or cold feet from featured artists. The reality, which Max monitored through Writers' Intelligence Network, was far more dire. Harrington had overextended himself financially, counting on the Wellington Heights Cultural Center contract to attract investor capital. With that project stalled in ethical investigations and regulatory delays, his cash reserves were dwindling rapidly. More damaging were the ripple effects in the art world. Max had carefully seeded doubts among Harrington's professional circle through anonymous tips about the ethics investigation and suggestions that his Albany gallery might be another vehicle for inflated valuations and questionable transactions. The art market ran on reputation and confidence, both now compromised for Harrington. Several major collectors had quietly withdrawn support. Two prominent artists had canceled their exhibition commitments, citing scheduling conflicts, but privately expressing concerns about association with controversy. Through it all, Max maintained his distance, allowing circumstances to unfold naturally. He focused on his business, secured several lucrative new contracts, and continued gathering information through his expanding network of allies. The pressure visibly affected Lori. She'd appeared increasingly strained during court-mandated co-parenting meetings, her designer clothes replaced by simpler attire, her confident demeanor giving way to nervous energy. Twice she'd attempted to discuss reconciliation, floating the idea of taking a break from the divorce proceedings. Max had responded with polite indifference, treating her as he would any business acquaintance, cordial but emotionally detached. Each rejection seemed to destabilize her further. Caleb had returned from his Princeton interview subdued but grateful for Max's assistance. He'd begun texting his father occasionally, mostly about school or baseball, neutral topics that carefully avoided mention of Lori or Harrington. Max responded with measured warmth, neither pursuing nor rejecting these tentative reconnections. The turning point came 3 days before Christmas, when Max received an unexpected visitor at his office. Pam Reeves, Lori's divorce attorney, appeared without appointment, her typically aggressive demeanor replaced by cautious professionalism. "Mr. Blackburn," she began after declining coffee, "I'm here to discuss a potential settlement framework." Max leaned back in his chair. "My attorney handles all divorce matters, Ms. Reeves. You know that. This is," she hesitated, somewhat unofficial, "a preliminary conversation. About. Mrs. Blackburn is interested in expediting resolution. The protracted nature of these proceedings is causing undue stress for all parties." Max smiled thinly. Translation: Harrington's financial problems are affecting her lifestyle, and she wants a quick settlement before his situation deteriorates further. Reeves flinched slightly. "My client's personal relationships aren't relevant to this discussion. They became relevant when she left our marriage for another man, then tried to take half my business to finance their joint venture." Max stood. "Now, unless you have an actual proposal that improves upon my last offer, this meeting is concluded." 10%, Reeves said quickly. Mrs. Blackburn would accept 10% of the business valuation instead of 50, plus reduced spousal support, in exchange for an immediate settlement. Max walked to the window, looking out at the December snow beginning to fall. "Interesting. And what's changed to prompt this generosity?" Reeves remained silent. "Let me guess," Max continued. "The gallery opening has been postponed again. Investors are nervous. Harrington's promises are starting to sound hollow." "My client simply wants closure," Reeves insisted. Max turned back to her. "Tell Lori my terms haven't changed. She gets nothing from my business. Standard child support for Caleb. No alimony. She keeps her gallery interests. I keep my construction company. Clean break." "That's unconscionable. She supported you throughout the marriage. By sleeping with another man? By plotting with him to take my company?" Max's voice remained calm despite the cutting words. Tell her to accept my offer or prepare for a very public trial where every detail of her affair becomes record. Every email discussing their plans for my money. Every conversation with Harrington about leveraging my business for their benefit. Reeves gathered her briefcase, composure slipping. You're making a mistake, Mr. Blackburn. My client still has significant claims. No, Ms. Reeves. The mistake was thinking I would roll over and accept betrayal. Max opened his office door. Happy holidays. After she left, Max called Bennett to inform him of the unexpected visit. They're getting desperate, he concluded. Time to accelerate. Max, Bennett cautioned, you've already achieved significant protection for your assets. Maybe it's time to settle and move forward. This was never just about money, Bennett. Max's tone hardened. It's about consequences. That evening, Max attended the annual Christmas charity gala at Albany's Riverside Hotel, an event he'd previously avoided but now had strategic reason to attend. The city's business and political elite would be present, including key players in the Wellington Heights development. Max arrived alone, dressed in an impeccably tailored suit that transformed his rugged physicality into commanding presence. He moved through the crowded ballroom with deliberate ease, accepting greetings from acquaintances and introductions to influential strangers. He was discussing construction trends with the city planning director when he spotted them, Brody Harrington and Lori, entering the ballroom like royalty in exile. Harrington wore his signature charming smile, though it seemed strained around the edges. Lori clung to his arm, her green gown elegant but noticeably less extravagant than those of other attendees. Max watched peripherally as they worked the room, Harrington's practiced charm increasingly desperate as conversations turned brief and uncomfortable when certain topics arose. Several potential investors visibly disengaged when he mentioned his gallery plans. Near the bar, Max encountered Ernest Diaz, who nodded toward Harrington. Your wife's friend is having a rough evening. Ex-wife, Max corrected. And yes, it appears the shine is wearing off. Ethics Committee report comes out next week, Ernest murmured. Preliminary findings suggest multiple conflicts requiring further investigation. Just in time for the new year. Indeed. Ernest studied Max carefully. You seem remarkably composed for a man watching his marriage dissolution play out in public. Max sipped his whiskey. I built my first house when I was 22, Ernest. Know what I learned? Solid foundations determine everything. My marriage lacked one, apparently. And Harrington's business empire? Built on appearance rather than substance. Sand, not stone. Their conversation was interrupted by the distinctive sound of raised voices near the terrace doors. Harrington was engaged in intense discussion with a silver-haired man Max recognized as Victor Westfield, CEO of Westfield Group. Though they spoke in hushed tones, their body language conveyed unmistakable tension. Westfield jabbed a finger toward Harrington's chest before walking away, leaving the art dealer visibly shaken. Lori approached her lover, touching his arm questioningly. His response was a harsh whisper that made her recoil slightly before composing herself. Trouble in paradise, Ernest observed. Inevitably, Max replied. Later, as Max prepared to leave, he found himself face-to-face with Lori near the coat check. She looked momentarily startled, then adopted a forced smile. Max, you look well. Thank you. You seem. He paused deliberately, tired. Her smile faltered. The holidays are always busy. I imagine planning a gallery opening, managing a new relationship, and pursuing aggressive divorce litigation simultaneously would be exhausting. About that, Lori lowered her voice, glancing around to ensure privacy. Did Pam speak with you? She did. And my terms stand. Lori's composure cracked slightly. Max, be reasonable. We both want to move on. I am moving on. Quite successfully. Then why fight me on every detail? Why make this so difficult? Her voice held a note of genuine distress. We were married 20 years. Doesn't that count for anything? It counted for everything, Max replied quietly. Until you decided it didn't. Harrington appeared beside them, slipping a possessive arm around Lori's waist. Max Blackburn. Finally we meet properly. Max assessed him coolly. Mr. Harrington. Brody, please. He extended his hand with practiced charm. Despite the circumstances, I've heard impressive things about your construction work. Max ignored the offered hand. And I've heard interesting things about your business practices. Harrington's smile tightened. Small-town gossip can be so tedious. Ethics investigations, however, tend to be quite thorough. Max reached for his coat. Enjoy your evening. As he turned to leave, Harrington spoke again, voice lowered but intense. Whatever game you're playing, Blackburn, you're out of your league. Men like you build things. Men like me control who gets to build what, where, and when. Max looked back with a cold smile. Men like you talk. Men like me do. He nodded to Lori. Merry Christmas. Outside in the winter air, Max checked his phone to find a text from Caleb. Can we meet tomorrow? Important. My house. Noon, Max replied, then drove home through gently falling snow, the next phase of his plan crystallizing with each passing mile. Chapter 7. Structural Failure. Christmas Eve dawned clear and cold. Max sat at his kitchen table waiting for Caleb, who had arrived promptly at noon as arranged. The teenager paced nervously, declining coffee, refusing to remove his coat despite the warmth of the house. What's so important? Max finally asked. Caleb stopped pacing. Everything's falling apart. Be specific. Brody's gallery opening has been canceled. Not postponed, canceled. The investors pulled out completely. Caleb ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so like Max's own that it caused a momentary pang. Mom's freaking out. They've been fighting constantly. And this concerns me how. She thinks you're behind it somehow. That you're sabotaging Brody's business. Max's expression remained neutral. Your mother gives me too much credit. Harrington's problems are self-inflicted. Questionable business practices tend to catch up eventually. But the timing, right after we left. Coincidence. Or perhaps karmic justice. Caleb slumped into a chair. We have to move out of his place. He can't afford to keep it anymore. Where will you go? That's why I'm here. Caleb looked up, his expression a mixture of shame and desperation. Mom wanted me to ask if we could come back here. Temporarily. The request hung in the air between them. Max studied his son's face, noting the dark circles under his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. The boy who had thrown his keys and stormed out months ago now looked broken and uncertain. What does your mother expect, exactly? Max asked carefully. That she can leave me for another man, try to take half my business, and then return when her plan fails? She's sorry, Caleb said weakly. She made a mistake. A mistake, Max repeated. Is that what she calls it? Please, Dad. Just until we figure something out. We have nowhere else to go. Max stood and walked to the window, looking out at the snow-covered yard where he'd taught Caleb to throw a baseball, built his treehouse, created memories he'd thought would last a lifetime. Where is your mother now? At Brody's, packing our things. He's been drinking since yesterday. It's getting scary. Max turned back to his son. Scary how? Caleb hesitated. He threw something at her. A vase or something. Missed, but I've never seen him like that before. A cold anger settled in Max's chest. Whatever his feelings about Lori's betrayal, violence was another matter entirely. Go back and get your mother. Bring her here. You can stay in your old room. She can use the guest room. Max's tone was businesslike, devoid of emotion. This is temporary, and it comes with conditions we'll discuss when you're both here. Relief washed over Caleb's face. Thank you. Seriously, Dad, thank you. After Caleb left, Max called Ryder. Harrington's coming apart, he said without preamble. Apparently becoming violent. I need eyes on him. Already on it, Ryder replied. Got a call from a contact at Albany PD. Domestic disturbance reported at his address about an hour ago. No arrests, but it's escalating. Lori and Caleb are moving out today. Coming here temporarily. A pause. You're taking them back? Providing shelter, Max corrected. Not reconciliation. Still part of the plan? Adjusted slightly. But yes. While waiting for Lori and Caleb, Max prepared the guest room, changing sheets and towels with mechanical efficiency. He moved personal items from the master bedroom to his workshop, creating neutral territory for this temporary arrangement. They arrived as dusk was falling, Caleb helping Lori carry suitcases from her older Honda, the luxury Range Rover apparently no longer available. Lori entered hesitantly, her confident facade entirely gone, replaced by visible exhaustion and something like fear. Thank you for this, she said quietly. I know you have every reason to refuse. Max nodded without warmth. Caleb will show you to the guest room. We'll talk after you've settled. Over a strained dinner of takeout Chinese food, Max outlined his terms. This arrangement is temporary, 30 days maximum. During that time, Lori will accelerate the divorce proceedings according to my original terms. No claims on my business, standard child support only, no alimony. Lori nodded, eyes downcast. I understand. Additionally, you will provide a complete account of Harrington's business dealings, particularly regarding the Wellington Heights development and any manipulation of city officials. Her head snapped up. You can't be serious. Entirely serious. Max's voice was steel. You chose him over our marriage. You participated in his schemes. Now you'll help ensure he faces appropriate consequences. He'll be ruined, as he intended to ruin me, using my wife and son as leverage. Caleb looked between them, confusion evident. What are you talking about? Max turned to his son. Your mother's boyfriend wasn't just interested in art, Caleb. He was using her, using both of you, to pressure me into selling my business to Westfield Group, who needed my company and client relationships for the Wellington Heights development. That's not true, Lori protested weakly. Brody loves me. Brody loves what you could provide him. Access to my business through you. Social connections to Albany's elite. A convenient hostess for his networking events. Max's gaze hardened. How many times has he promised to make you gallery director? How many delays and excuses? Lori's silence was confirmation enough. Wait, Caleb interjected. Are you saying he was just using Mom to get to you? To your business? Ask your mother about the emails she forwarded to him. My financial information. Discussions about how to maximize what she could take in the divorce. Lori flinched as if struck. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that, Max countered. And now that his plans have collapsed, he's discarded you. Just like the others before you. Others? Caleb echoed. Brody has a pattern. Find vulnerable artistic women. Promise them career opportunities, use them for connections, then move on when they're no longer useful. Max's voice remained measured. Your mother was simply the latest. Lori's composure finally broke. How could you possibly know all this? I pay attention. I investigate. I protect what's mine. Max stood from the table. You have until tomorrow evening to decide. Cooperate fully, or find alternative accommodation. He left them sitting in stunned silence as he retreated to his workshop, where he reviewed Ryder's latest updates. Harrington had been seen leaving his apartment in a state of obvious intoxication, headed toward his temporarily closed gallery space. Local police had been notified to watch for his vehicle, concerned about his condition. The following morning, Christmas Day, Max awoke to find Lori sitting at the kitchen table, a thick folder before her. I'll do it, she said without preamble. Everything you asked. All of it. Max poured himself coffee. What changed your mind? Brody called last night. Dozens of times. Threatening messages. Said he'd destroy me professionally if I didn't come back. She pushed her phone across the table, display showing a string of increasingly unhinged texts. The man I thought I knew. He never existed, did he? People show their true nature under pressure, Max observed, returning her phone. What about this? He gestured to the folder. Everything I have. Financial records. Meeting notes. The names he dropped about who he was bribing and how. She looked up, eyes red-rimmed but determined. Use it however you want. I just want out. Max leafed through the documents, noting detailed accounts of inflated art purchases, tax manipulation schemes, and explicit discussions of which officials needed what inducements. This is thorough, he commented. I was his partner in everything, Lori said bitterly. He made sure I was implicated enough that I couldn't turn on him. Yet here you are. Here I am. She took a shuddering breath. What happens now? Now I make some calls. By evening, the wheels were in motion. Max had forwarded key documents to Ernest Diaz and selected journalists. Ryder had delivered additional evidence to the ethics committee investigating the Wellington Heights development. Harrington, meanwhile, had escalated his erratic behavior. After being escorted from his gallery by security when neighbors reported shouting and breaking glass, he'd begun making threatening calls not just to Lori but to city officials, investors, and even Westfield executives, blaming everyone but himself for his collapsing empire. As the family sat in uncomfortable silence watching Christmas movies, Max's phone rang. It was Ryder. Harrington's on the move, he reported. Showed up at Westfield's home, making threats. Security removed him, but he's increasingly unstable. Location now? Driving toward Wellington Heights. Police are tracking but haven't intervened yet. Keep me posted. Max hung up and turned to Lori and Caleb. I need to handle something. Stay here. Lori's expression showed alarm. Is it Brody? What's happening? Nothing for you to worry about. Just stay inside, doors locked. Max drove through deserted Christmas night streets to the Wellington Heights development site, where construction had halted for the holidays. His headlights illuminated the security fence and partial structures beyond, the skeleton of what would have been Harrington's crown jewel cultural center. He parked discreetly and called Ryder for an update. Subject entered the construction site 5 minutes ago, carrying something. Possible accelerant. Police. Notified. En route, but delayed by holiday staffing. I'm going in. Max, wait for. Max ended the call and approached the fence. Finding a section where the lock had been broken, presumably by Harrington, he slipped through and moved silently across the darkened construction site. The scent of gasoline led him to the central building, the future cultural center. Inside, illuminated only by security lights, he found Harrington splashing liquid across architectural plans and building materials, muttering incoherently. If I can't have it, no one will, Harrington was saying, his cultured voice slurred with alcohol and rage. Fucking Westfield. Fucking city. Fucking Blackburn. That's not going to solve anything, Max said calmly, stepping into view. Harrington whirled, gasoline sloshing from the container he held. You? Of course it's you. The fucking builder. The man who ruins everything. You ruin things yourself, Harrington. I just exposed the truth. Truth. Harrington laughed bitterly. There's no truth in business or art, only perception. And you destroyed mine. Turned everyone against me. You tried to take my life, Max said evenly. My business. My family. Your precious family. Harrington sneered. Lori couldn't wait to leave you. Called you boring, predictable. Said you never understood her potential. Max remained unmoved. And now she's back in my home while you're here, drunk and alone, about to commit arson. Harrington's face contorted with rage. He reached into his pocket, producing a silver lighter. You think you've won? I'm still Brody fucking Harrington. I'll rebuild elsewhere. But this, he gestured around wildly. This dies tonight. And you with it, Max observed. Security cameras recorded your entrance. Police are on their way. You'll trade gallery openings for prison visitation hours. Worth it to destroy something you want. Max shook his head. I don't want this development. Never did. I just didn't want you to have it. The simple statement seemed to penetrate Harrington's inebriated haze. This whole thing, destroying my reputation, my business, turning Lori against me, just revenge? Consequences, Max corrected. For trying to use my wife and son to manipulate me. For treating people as pawns in your games. In the distance, police sirens wailed. Harrington's expression shifted from rage to desperate calculation. I still have the lighter, he warned, thumb hovering over the ignition. And I still have evidence of every corrupt deal you've made for the past year, Max countered. Evidence that could mean years in prison, not months. What do you want? Put down the gasoline. Walk out with dignity. Leave Albany and never contact my family again. And if I do, certain documents might not reach the district attorney. Your legal troubles would be significant but not catastrophic. Harrington's hand trembled, the lighter dancing between his fingers. For a moment, Max thought he might choose destruction. Then, with a broken sob, Harrington dropped the lighter and gasoline container. I loved her, you know, he said, suddenly sounding old and tired. Maybe not at first, but eventually. Genuinely. Not enough to treat her with respect, Max replied. Not enough to be honest. Blue and red lights flashed outside as police vehicles surrounded the building. Harrington straightened his posture, adjusted his collar with shaking hands, and attempted to reclaim some semblance of dignity. This isn't over, Blackburn. Yes, Max said quietly as officers entered with weapons drawn. It is. Max watched as Harrington was handcuffed and led away, his once commanding presence reduced to a stumbling, disheveled figure in the back of a police cruiser. Only then did he call Ryder to confirm the situation was contained. By the time Max returned home, it was past midnight. He found Caleb asleep on the couch, television still playing Christmas movies. Lori sat in the kitchen, hands wrapped around a mug of tea, waiting. Is it done? She asked simply. Max nodded, pouring himself a whiskey. Harrington's been arrested. Attempted arson, breaking and entering, probably several other charges once they search his vehicle and devices. And us? What happens to us now? Max studied her face. Once so beloved, now a complex mixture of familiar and stranger. That depends on your definition of US. I meant Caleb and me. You'll stay until you find suitable housing. I'll help financially within reason. Caleb remains at his current school through graduation. He took a measured sip of whiskey. Beyond that, we proceed with the divorce as agreed. No chance of, she hesitated, reconciliation? None. Lori nodded, unsurprised. I thought I wanted more than this life. More than what we built. I was wrong. Yes. Max agreed without malice. You were. In the dim kitchen light, they sat in silence. Not companions, not enemies. Just two people at the end of one chapter and the uncertain beginning of another. Chapter 8, Aftermath. January brought bitter cold to Albany and radical changes to the lives touched by Max's calculated retribution. The ethics investigation into the Wellington Heights development had expanded into a full criminal probe, with Councilwoman Torres resigning amid allegations of accepting bribes disguised as art purchases. Westfield Group had withdrawn entirely from the project, citing regulatory uncertainty, but privately reeling from the public relations damage and potential legal exposure. The cultural center site stood abandoned, construction equipment removed, leaving only skeletal framework, a monument to collapsed ambition. Brody Harrington remained in custody, denied bail due to flight risk concerns. The charges had multiplied as investigators uncovered evidence of tax fraud, wire fraud, and witness intimidation. His carefully cultivated image had shattered completely, former society friends and art world connections distancing themselves with remarkable speed. Throughout this public implosion, Max maintained his distance, neither commenting publicly nor visibly celebrating. He focused on his business, secured several prestigious new contracts that had previously been earmarked for Westfield, and began a careful rebuilding of his personal life. Lori and Caleb remained in his home under the temporary arrangement, though the atmosphere had evolved from tense to functionally cooperative. Lori had found part-time work at a local community arts center, a significant step down from gallery director, but a start toward independence. Caleb had returned to his previous school, gradually reconnecting with old friends and rejoining the baseball team. His attitude toward Max had shifted from hostility to something approaching respect, though genuine warmth remained elusive. One evening in late January, Max returned home to find Caleb waiting for him in the kitchen, baseball glove in hand. Got time to throw a few? Caleb asked, an olive branch disguised as a casual request. In the backyard, as twilight gathered and their breaths formed clouds in the frigid air, they established a rhythm of catch that felt both familiar and new. I got accepted to state, Caleb said after several minutes of silence. Engineering program. Max raised an eyebrow, surprised. Not Princeton. Caleb shrugged, throwing a fastball that popped satisfyingly in Max's glove. Princeton was Brody's idea, never really mine. Engineering is a solid choice, Max offered neutrally. Thought maybe construction management. Eventually, Caleb's eyes flicked to Max's face, then away. If that's something you'd be interested in. The implication, a potential future role in Blackburn construction, hung between them like their visible breath in the cold air. Might be, Max allowed. After you've earned a degree, learn the fundamentals. They threw in silence for several more minutes before Caleb spoke again. I've been thinking about what happened. With Mom. With Brody. He caught Max's throw, held the ball, studying its stitching. I said things I didn't mean. About being embarrassed by you. By this life. People say things in anger. Max replied, the closest he could come to absolution. No, it wasn't just anger. Caleb shook his head. It was, I don't know, wanting something different. Something that seemed more impressive. Material things can create that illusion. Yeah, well, Brody had all the material things. Turns out he was the most hollow person I've ever met. Max nodded thoughtfully. Success and character aren't the same. They continued their game of catch until darkness made it impractical, then moved inside where Lori was preparing dinner, another adjustment to their temporary arrangement. She cooked meals while Max covered housing expenses, a practical division of responsibilities without emotional entanglement. Mail came for you, she said, nodding toward the counter. Looks official. Among the envelopes was one from the district attorney's office, a request for Max to provide testimony in the expanding corruption case. He set it aside without comment. Later that evening, after Caleb had gone to bed, Lori approached Max in his workshop, where he was reviewing blueprints for an upcoming project. "The 30 days are almost up," she said, leaning against the doorframe. Max glanced up. "Yes. I've found an apartment. Small, but affordable with my new job. Near Caleb's school." "Good." Lori hesitated. "Bennett sent over the final divorce papers today. Everything as we agreed. I'll review them tomorrow." "Max," she began, then faltered. "I want to apologize. Not just for Brody, but for losing sight of what we built together. For thinking something flashier would make me happier." Max set down his pencil. "You don't owe me an apology, Lori. You made choices. So did I." "Your choices were strategic," she observed. "Calculated." "Yes." "How long had you been planning it? The whole takedown of Brody's business, the Wellington Heights project?" "Since the night you left." Lori shook her head in wonder. "You never raised your voice. Never showed your anger. Just methodically dismantled everything." "Anger clouds judgment," Max said simply. "Better to channel it productively. It's terrifying, you know. That capacity for controlled retribution." She studied him. "Did you ever consider forgiveness instead?" "No." The blunt answer hung between them. "Not even now?" she pressed. "Not even a little?" Max looked at her directly. "I don't forgive betrayal, Lori. Never have, never will. I provide for Caleb because he's my son, regardless of his choices. I allowed you temporary shelter because it was practical. But forgiveness? No. That's a heavy burden to carry. It's not a burden if you don't perceive it as such." Lori nodded slowly. "I think I finally understand you, Max. After 20 years of marriage, it took losing you to truly see you. Perhaps we never really knew each other at all." She turned to leave, then paused. "One more question. The night Brody was arrested, you could have let him destroy himself, burn down the building, go to prison for decades. Why intervene?" "Because I wanted him to know," Max replied. "I wanted him to understand that his downfall wasn't bad luck or circumstances. It was me. Deliberately. Specifically." Lori shivered slightly. "Like I said, terrifying." After she left, Max returned to his blueprints, but his concentration had fractured. He found himself reflecting on the past months, the betrayal, the calculated response, the systematic dismantling of his enemies, the emotional aftermath. He didn't regret his actions. Every step had been considered, measured, precise, like laying the foundation for a structure designed to last generations. Yet something remained unresolved, a loose end in an otherwise pristine plan. The next morning, Max visited Bennett's office to review and sign the divorce papers. The process was efficient, unemotional, division of assets clearly delineated, child support terms established, clean legal separation after 20 years of marriage. "You've achieved everything you wanted," Bennett observed as Max signed the final document. "Protected your business, secured favorable terms, watched Harrington's empire crumble. Feel any better?" "It wasn't about feeling better," Max replied. "It was about consequences." "And now? What's next?" Max considered the question. "Rebuild. Move forward. Alone. For now." Bennett studied his oldest friend. "You know, Max, most men in your position would have exposed the affair immediately, fought messily in court, made public scenes. Your way was certainly more effective, but colder, more absolute. You didn't just win the battle, you salted the earth." Max nodded, acknowledging the assessment without disputing it. Some situations call for definitive resolution. After leaving Bennett's office, Max drove not to his construction site as planned, but to the county jail where Brody Harrington awaited trial. He'd arranged the visit through Ryder's connections, ensuring it wouldn't appear in any public record. The man who entered the visitor's room bore little resemblance to the polished art dealer who had stolen Max's wife. Harrington's designer clothes had been replaced by prison orange, his carefully styled hair now lank and unkempt, his manicured hands fidgeting constantly. "Blackburn," he said, surprise evident as he sat across the plexiglass divider. "Come to gloat?" "No," Max replied calmly. "Came to finish our conversation." Harrington laughed bitterly. "What's left to say? You won. Completely. Thoroughly. My business is destroyed, my reputation ruined, my freedom gone." "Yes. Then why are you here?" Max leaned forward slightly. "Because I want you to understand something. This wasn't just reaction. It was an impulse. From the moment you targeted my family, This outcome was inevitable. So this visit is what? A victory lap. It's a message. When you eventually leave this place, whether in months or years, remember this conversation. Remember that everything that happened was by design. My design. Harrington's facade of casual disdain cracked, revealing the fear beneath. You're claiming you planned all of this? Every step. From the ethics investigation to the Wellington Heights delays to your financial collapse. Calculated. Executed. Completed. That's impossible. No one could orchestrate all that. A good builder anticipates problems before they arise. Harrington plans for contingencies, creates structure that appears simple but contains complex support systems invisible to the casual observer. Harrington stared, finally comprehending the depth of what had happened to him. Jesus, you're a fucking sociopath. No, I'm a man who protects what's his, who ensures consequences for those who cause harm. Max stood. Whatever sentence the court gives you, remember this. It wasn't bad luck or circumstances that brought you here. It was deliberate response to your actions. Is that supposed to make me feel worse? Because I already lost everything. It's supposed to make you understand, Max replied. Actions have consequences. Always. As he turned to leave, Harrington called after him. What about Lori? Does she know what you did? How you manipulated everything? She knows enough. And you'll never take her back, will you? Despite her begging. Despite her regrets. Max paused at the door. No. Then we both lost someone we loved, Harrington said, a final attempt to establish some equivalence between them. The difference, Max replied without looking back, is that I chose my loss. You had yours imposed upon you. Remember the difference. He left Harrington sitting in stunned silence, the final piece of his retribution complete. Not just the destruction of the man's external life, but the shattering of his internal narrative, his understanding of himself as a puppet master rather than a puppet. Chapter 9, Solid Ground. On a clear April morning, Max stood at the edge of a construction site overlooking Albany's River District. Blackburn construction signs marked the perimeter of what would become the city's new community arts center. Ironically, rising on land originally designated for Harrington's cultural center before the Wellington Heights project collapsed. The Winters scandal had ended with Brody Harrington accepting a plea deal. 5 years for fraud and attempted arson, his art empire dismantled, his reputation irreparably damaged. Councilwoman Torres and 2 other officials had resigned in disgrace. Westfield Group had withdrawn from Albany entirely, their ambitious development plans abandoned. In the aftermath, the city had reimagined the site as a public resource rather than a private profit center. Max's bid, emphasizing community access, educational programs, and sustainable design, had won the contract against national competitors, cementing Blackburn Construction's position as Albany's premier builder. Looks good, said a voice behind him. Max turned to find Caleb approaching, dressed for his part-time job at the construction office. At 18, he'd grown into his frame, shoulders broadening, face losing its boyish softness. Foundation solid, Max replied, both literal and metaphorical. That's what matters. They stood side by side, surveying the busy site where crews prepared for the day's work. Their relationship had evolved into something new over the past months. Not the easy camaraderie of before, but a measured respect built on clearer understanding. Mom's gallery showing went well last night, Caleb said conversationally. Sold 3 pieces. Max nodded. Lori had begun creating her own art again, securing space in a local cooperative gallery. Their divorce had finalized without drama, their interactions now limited to practical matters regarding Caleb. Good for her. She asked if you might come to the next one. Caleb glanced sideways at his father. Said some of her new work was inspired by everything that happened. Not interested, Max said simply. Caleb sighed but didn't argue. He'd learned his father's boundaries were non-negotiable. I talked to the construction management department at State yesterday. Advisor thinks I can start the program this summer. Get ahead on credits. Smart move. Max allowed a small smile. Their building systems course is excellent preparation for real-world application. A comfortable silence settled between them as they watched the morning work unfold. Concrete being poured, steel being positioned, the organized chaos of creation that Max had always found deeply satisfying. Dad, Caleb said eventually, there's something I've been wanting to ask. Go ahead. That night, when Brody was arrested at the construction site, You were there before the police arrived. Yes. You could have let him go through with it. Burn the place down. Get himself a longer sentence. Max turned to face his son directly. Is that a question? I guess I'm wondering, why didn't you? After everything he did to us, to you, why stop him? Because it wasn't about destruction, Max answered after a moment's consideration. It was about justice. Consequences proportional to actions. But you destroyed him anyway. His business, his reputation, everything. His choices destroyed those things. I simply ensured he couldn't escape the natural results of his decisions. Max gestured toward the construction site. When you build something worthwhile, you follow plans, obey physical laws, respect the materials. Harrington built his life ignoring those principles, shortcuts, deception, manipulation. Such structures inevitably collapse. Caleb absorbed this, nodding slowly. And Mom? Was what happened to her proportional? The question hung between them, weighted with all the pain and adjustment of the past months. Your mother made her choices, Max said evenly. She's living with the consequences, both negative and positive. She has her independence now, her art, a clearer understanding of her priorities. But not you. No. Because you can't forgive, Caleb stated, not accusatory but seeking understanding. Because some breaks can't be repaired, Max corrected. A foundation, once cracked, is permanently compromised. You can patch it, disguise the damage, but it will never again support the weight it was designed to bear. Caleb considered this construction metaphor, so typical of his father's worldview. Is that true for me too? For what I said and did? Max turned to his son, expression softening slightly. Different situation. You were 17, influenced by others, misled about motives and consequences. The foundation between us wasn't destroyed, just stressed. Reparable, with proper reinforcement over time. Relief flickered across Caleb's face. So we're building back. Different structure, better materials, more honest design. Max placed a hand briefly on his son's shoulder. But yes, building back. His phone buzzed with a text from his foreman, needing consultation on a technical issue. Max nodded toward the site office. Duty calls. As they walked together across the bustling construction site, Max reflected on the past year's journey. He had lost his marriage but preserved his business. Lost certain illusions but gained clearer perspective. Most importantly, he had ensured that those who had sought to use and discard him faced appropriate consequences for their choices. In his workshop that evening, Max reviewed plans for the Community Arts Center's second phase. His home was quieter now. Lori lived across town in her small apartment, and Caleb split his time between both households, preparing for his upcoming move to university housing. The doorbell rang unexpectedly. Max opened it to find Ernest Diaz on his porch, a bottle of bourbon in hand. Thought we might celebrate, Ernest said, holding up the bottle. City Council unanimously approved the expanded funding for the Arts Center today. Your design adaptations won over even the skeptics. Max welcomed him inside, retrieving glasses from the kitchen. As Ernest poured the bourbon, he studied Max thoughtfully. You know, when this all started, the Wellington Heights collapse, Harrington's downfall, I wondered how much you had orchestrated. Max raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. Most thought it was just karma, Ernest continued. Bad people finally facing consequences. But I've known you long enough to recognize your methodology. Meaning, you don't act rashly. You plan, assess, execute with precision. Ernest raised his glass. Like a master builder. Max acknowledged this with a slight nod, accepting the comparison. The question that lingers, Ernest said, is whether you regret any of it. The collateral damage. Your marriage. The period when Caleb was distant. No regrets, Max replied simply. Some prices are worth paying for clarity. And justice. That too. They drank in contemplative silence before Ernest spoke again. You could have taken Westfield's original offer, you know. Sold your business, walked away wealthy. Avoided all of this. At what cost? Max asked. My integrity. The company I built? My self-respect. Many would consider those acceptable sacrifices for peace. I'm not many. Ernest smiled. No, you certainly aren't. He raised his glass again. To standing your ground. To consequences, Max countered, clinking glasses. Later, after Ernest had left, Max stepped onto his back porch and gazed up at the clear night sky. His phone buzzed with a text from Caleb. Orientation packet came today. Starting to feel real. Max smiled slightly as he typed his response. Foundations matter. Build something worthwhile. He pocketed his phone and breathed deeply, feeling neither triumph nor regret, just the settled certainty that comes from living according to one's principles, regardless of cost. He had protected what mattered, ensured justice for betrayal, and emerged with his core intact. Some would call his actions cold, calculating, even merciless. Max considered them simply proportional, the natural response of a man who understood that every action has consequences, and who ensured those consequences were delivered with precision rather than passion. In the distance, the lights of Albany illuminated the night sky above the river. Tomorrow would bring new projects, new challenges, new opportunities to build lasting structures, both physical and relational. Max would approach them as he always had, with careful planning, quality materials, and unwavering commitment to solid foundations. Not forgetting, not forgiving, but moving forward on ground of his own making. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.